Swagatam, welcome again, and welcome to the Teachings of the Dharma, first class, second half of the teachings on Advaita Vedanta and Jivan Mukta. It's a real mouthful there too, but basically even my teacher's name was rather a mouthful, Swami Aseshanandaji Maharaj. Aseshananda, I could have several definitions for that in Sanskrit, but Ashesha is like no residue left over, the bliss of having no karmic residue, if you will, or anything that would bind you left over by the end of your life. Like Lord Vashishta once said, if you get toward the end of your life in your older age and you haven't got peace of mind yet, then something went wrong. So his idea is that, life should end in consummation, peace of mind, at least peace of mind, if not higher realization. So it's a good way to check ourselves as we enter into our midlife and later life to really see if our mind can settle down and experience peace, and that it's uninterrupted and unalloyed. And it's real peace, that is, and that it doesn't have any breaks. It's, again, sort of a part of our naivety that we think that Brahman has action in it. That's all supposed action. We would call it projection or apparent movement. But it's even on a physical level rather dreamlike. When you assess it all at the end of the day in deep sleep, for instance, or in meditation, even better. But nevertheless, you feel this peace of mind as a state of inaction in you, where you can turn off everything and rest inside of yourself and be perfectly content and happy for as long as you want to sit. And it was a very good penultimate ideal too, as we asked for ideals this morning at the New Thought Church talk. Everyone came forth with their personal ideal for their life, what their goal would be. So that would be peace of mind. Holy Mother said, you need that first and foremost. So I find myself sometimes counseling my own students and disciples about that they say, well, I know my peace of mind has been interrupted by this family member or by that job or by that particular person. And so you have to tell them nothing should threaten your peace of mind. And whatever it does has to be given the boot, kicked out of your mind, kicked out of your life. And you go to a new job, better job, resolve and so forth. And so to have no residue anyway is a very powerful name to take, Ashesha. Ashesha is also the great snake, that signifies what's left over at the end of these long Mahayugas, these long kalpas of time. And times we'll lie on the ocean Ekarnava, the etheric waters of life. And even Vishnu would rest on that thousand-headed, sometimes called Ananta. So the snake is a very powerful representation like that. So Swami Aseshanandaji Maharaj, I probably attest that at the end of his life he probably went to a deep repose. And we know Swami Vivekananda did, because he left the body consciously after getting the boon of dying, choosing his time of his own death, that Mrityunjaya it's called. He said he had that mantra for meditating on Shiva. So all of these things are not only possible, they're probable, and they should be made practical in our life. We should be looking at things like rebirth, reincarnation, karma, even though they are relative laws, operating in the realm of name and form, which is ultimately suspect, whether it's real or unreal and so forth. Nevertheless, we should be looking at all of those and explaining our lives and our actions and our thoughts in terms of those, rather than hiding out in some sort of narrow view that pinions us all down into either, a one-size-fits-all religion, which is not acceptable to India, or into an intellectual ideation that doesn't allow for things like involution, what to speak of evolution. Evolution is all pretty much that's believed in. Shankara's philosophy accepts evolution, but it also accepts involution. There, involution of nature only is meant, and for the manifestation of the perfection already present in the spirit. But except for a few brighter scientists, the West has not accepted involution. One scientist has said, consciousness is sleeping in an atom. Consciousness is dreaming in a plant. It is half awake in an animal and is awake in a man. But I must add that it is only fully awake in an illumined soul. Only that one has accomplished involution and realized the Atman. So then deep, deep back into the very recesses of this fantastic mental projection, this Mahasankalpa of the Trinity, one would work their way back like that. And there are systems and methods in which to do so. I mentioned just the basic one of them at the first half when I said that you could connect earth to smell and water to taste and fire to sight and so forth. These are ways of making connections that Western man has lost and therefore become alienated from nature and trying to dominate over nature and losing his respect and reverence for nature. So those kinds of problems could be offset to a great deal. Also probably should have never happened in the first place, but there was that errant thinking of early science and fundamentalist religion that's in our very genes right now. It's in our very samskaras as Western people. It's not that some of us hasn't taken births in other races and other religions before. That also is a wide open possibility. I myself feel that. So, because what brought me to Vedanta at 19 years of age without any obstruction, just 19 years of paying my debt to society, and poof, I was back on the trail. Sri Krishna calls that picking up the thread of your yoga in each lifetime. So there are going to be some substantial things in the way of you grabbing onto that thread, or that tail of the tiger again in any given lifetime. And much of what is to blame for that is society, fundamentalist religion, science, military regimes, where all these karmas are created from. Whereas if you go to the great thinkers, that karma is expunged in them. They don't have these bad effects coming back at them. They don't think wrong, do wrong. Their whole idea is good, best, and better. That's how they operate. So it doesn't have anything to do with fear or doubt or regression or oops, I made a mistake, oops, I split the atom and it got into the wrong hands. All of that is regret, you see, and karma to pay. So particularly potent message, I think, in America today, and he has just passed within the last 20 years. So I think it's this being live streamed, being recorded, and what we're going to show over the next 5 Sundays in these 10 charts and some of the concomitant charts I want to show is going to be a good testament to leave behind about a man from another country who came here in our time, not just Vivekananda in 1893, but in our time, and inspected us, scrutinized us. He took a cross-section of us, like a scientist would take, a particle and examined it, a strip of it, and looked at it under his microscope of his third eye and saw what we were all about, what we were up to, and wondered why we couldn't make spiritual progress, why we would hear the truth and not immediately adhere to it and march forward to reach the goal. I mean, when I was at his ashram, I'd see people falling asleep in his talks. What? I had found what I was looking for in those words. I realized the immense power of words then, when they were used for dharmic purposes. And I also realized the intense danger in words when they're used for social purposes. He used to, in fact, yell at us, said, "This is not a social club." He would come and yell at us that. If we started talking, if we got off the point of why we were there at the Vedanta Society, he would come down on us like that. So, I saw a person's hair jump once. the force of his voice, breath, came up so close to him and yelled at him, "This is not a social club." Just took that person to task. Person would not talk mere nothings, zeros anymore. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you eat radish, if a man eats radish, then he belches radish. He's talking about worldly people. They soak in the world and then they just exude the world in all its worst aspects. Excrement comes out of them in all forms, on all levels, not just the physical level. So, what is the secret to a Jivan Mukta? What is the secret that Advaita Vedanta is always trying to propose to us, that we can hear over and over again, but is so subtle that we can even one day understand it for a few brief seconds and walk out of the ashram, monastery, or church, or tekka, or kaba, or whatever, and forget it. And what was that again? It's this very, very subtle non-dual truth, Advaita it's called. And the Westerners are not on the trail of it. There's a really beautiful chant I'll get to later, that in which Swami Aseshanandaji says that he heard that scientists were starting to look into the Advaita of Advaita Vedanta, and he took great exception to that. He said, no, they're not looking into Advaita. They're certainly not looking into Indian Advaita. They're looking into power and domination and war. That's what they're looking into. They're looking into the Bhoga Marga, the path of pleasure. And he had renounced the path of pleasure. He used to say, people say, I've fallen in love. See? And they fall in love with each other's egos, he said. But what about God? He asks them, aren't you in love with God? And they say, no, I'll fall in love with God when he comes to me. And then he would tell them, but will God come onto your football field? Will he come into your television set? Will he come into your bowling alley? Evidently bowling was big back in his heyday. But no, that's not true. You see, at the path of pleasure, God is missing. The yogis know that. They know that pain is a better teacher than pleasure, so they'll eschew pleasure and they'll go after their pain. So they'll face up with their pain. Father of Yoga has that in his sutras. Krishna has it in his Gita. What is sweet in the beginning, you don't want, because it turns sour later. What's sour in the beginning, take to that, Arjuna, because that turns sweet in the end. So if you're following the path of pleasure, it's a kind of hypnotism. And he saw us under the press of that hypnotism, and the reasons were religion and science, basically. That we had taken to these inferior methods and ideologies that were not based, time-tested by illumined souls. A few geniuses had gotten into the mix. In terms of religion, a few royalty gotten in and messed up the scriptures. See, text tortured the scriptures. Kings and so forth. They have no business interpreting scripture. That is only the property of the seers, you see. And then, if it's the property of the seers, it will stay illumined and enlightened, just like the Upanishads have. You can walk outside in the hall right now, pick up the Katha Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, and get Advaita Vedanta in a few slokas. Now it's up for you to unwrap that. You do by swadhyaya. You read it, take it in, memorize it, and then you sit with it for a couple hours. Sit with a few words for a couple hours. And see if that doesn't split the atom of Maya, release it, implode a huge power for spiritual awakening. My feeling is that Ananda doesn't come from bhakti, it comes from jnana. The ones that have the best high non-dual samadhi, who take them completely out of their minds, they're not dancing and singing anymore. When they go into that kind of non-dual state, it's because they split the atom of knowledge inside of their mind, and that it released bliss. Knowledge releases bliss. First, it comes to you in the form of peace, and you get all peaceful and non-violent. But then you say, well, what's next? I sit here in my peace and enjoy myself. But then you start looking deeper and deeper into the profound meanings of words. Sadakya, they call it in Tantra. 6 ways of realizing the non-dual Brahman has to do with words, alphabets, lokas, principles, tattvas, and time. Those are the 6 elements of Sadakya in the Tantric system. By the time you get down to Varnas, alphabets, the garland of alphabets that Mother Saraswati wears around her neck, then you've gotten into understanding that the worlds are made out of words. Like Holy Mother used to say, it's a piece of felt, this is just your thought concretized. This started out in the mind as a thought, piece of felt. And you can destroy this piece of felt, but you can't destroy that piece of felt thought in your mind. So this is interior life, and one needs to march step by step back in evolution, an involution style, pardon me. And if science is proposing only evolution, then you're up a creek without a paddle. You have nowhere to go. I mean, who doesn't want to return to their own home? Swami Vivekananda used to sing this song about it. Mono chalo nija niketane. Mono chalo nija niketane. Samshara videshe videshe return to your own abode, your eternal self, your home. You're a foreigner out here in the land of the 5 elements. Why did you roam about aimlessly with no real purpose in it? The 5 senses, the 5 elements, all these are different from you. None of them belong to you. Why have you become senseless in your attachment to others and forgotten your own true nature? That's just one verse of this beautiful song that Sri Ramakrishna had Naren, Swami Vivekananda, sing him when they first met. So, I hear you're a great singer, young man. And so he said, Mono chalo, oh mind, return to your own abode. Because Vivekananda, the young Naren, had come back to his own home on earth. His name was Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, about whom he said, he loved me far, far more than my parents ever did. And he releases all beings from the samsara of this world. The beautiful song to the Master says, O breaker of this world's chains. So this is why a great soul will look up and see, that is, look inward towards a being like that, who gathers around him 8, 12, or 16 direct disciples, each capable of shaking the world. Each one of them capable of shaking the world if they were given the spotlight. Well, origin of consciousness we looked at. We won't take everything about it, but we should look into the origin of human beings. What does science say? All beings are inseparable from nature. So we've come out of nature, we return to nature. If there is any involution for us, it's birth, old age, decay, and death, as Buddha said. You see, that's our end. And the consciousness in this doesn't have any life prior, like anterior to life and mind. That's false thinking to them. Theology would say all beings are separate from and conceived by a creator. So that idea, suspect word creator or creation, comes in again. We've already discussed that. But as far as being separate from that, when I and my Father are one, or tujse humne dilko lagaya. I've finally realized, O Lord, that all of this, all of the worlds are in you, and I too am in you. You are all that is. Beautiful song in India. Gajal it's called. And so that kind of thinking is there to give us an alternative. Vedanta says all beings are non-originated and inseparable from reality. That's a breath of clean air to breathe philosophically. Non-originated, that's that first axiom I talked about, a parinama. Here's a parinama. Look at a parinama. This is the chart I stayed up until midnight last night to fashion. And it's got a beautiful image painted by my old friend, Hawaii artist, very famous Hawaii artist, in the background here. And showing the transformation of nature going on. But there's a spotlight shining on this basket of flowers floating in the ethers. These souls are going around in a big circle all the way down to the lava. It's just an endless transformation, endless cycles, all being burnt in fire, turning to ash, and returning to a sort of formless unknown that nobody but the Indian seers have really been able to define very well for us. So if you look at the, and let me get my copy here, if I have it. If you look at some of the underpinnings of a parinama, we're able to understand better about it. And I will call up my copy here, if you just give me a moment. Because I'd rather teach from the actual chart. But I'm not putting my eyes on it right now, so maybe I will have to teach. So this first quote of Vivekananda says it all, but it's a bit dense. You have to follow it slowly. The kind of scientific Advaitism has been spreading throughout Europe ever since the theory of the conservation of energy was discovered. But all that is parinama. That means transformation, belief in transformation, belief in change. Evolution by real modification, as contrasted to a parinama, progressive manifestation by unreal superimposition. So I can just pause a moment to explain that. Vivekananda is talking about dualistic and qualified non-dualistic ways of thinking that feel like the change and transformation in souls and in nature is real. It's going forth as an actuality. But the Advaitist is coming by and saying, actually it's all in show. None of it's actual. There is no such thing as change. If all is Brahman and Brahman does not change, then how can change be real? And since you can't assign or pin the appellation of change onto the changeless reality, you'd have a contradiction, then you're also coming to the conclusion that all this is Brahman, sarvam kalvidam Brahma. Then you're going to have to say that everything that transforms and everything that changes is all in show. It's not actual. And so your actions, your thoughts, the 24 cosmic principles, the 7 worlds, the 14 spheres of existence, all the way back to the Mahat, the initial seed of creation, or what we call projection, all being just a play, a sport, an expression, a manifestation. Sometimes they even call it outright illusion. Pick any word you want. Some are more kind, some are less kind and more stark. But Nevertheless, the point is that Advaita Vedanta does not believe in transformation to be real. Aparinama is the truth of the matter, and changing senses and their objects, if that's all they have, are not going to understand that. They're not going to come anywhere near understanding it. Even great thinkers are having a hard time understanding it. How all of this can just be a mere show. Apparent, non-actual. I've searched for words in English that could try and convey, the sense of a parinama. But one thing we know for sure is that it's one of the pillars of Advaita Vedanta, and the other one is the birthless, deathless nature of the soul. A parinama and a jativada stand as these two pillars upon which this grand roof, if you will, of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta stands. To go on, he says, Ramanuja, remember, he was the philosopher of qualified non-dualism. Like, I'm the vine, you're the branches. That's kind of a qualified, Christ's qualified. But when he talked to the ordinary people, he'd say, pray to your Father in heaven. If you talk to people like his own disciples, he'd say, I and my Father are one. So you have three different perspectives there. He would talk in three different ways to three different kinds of people with three different levels of understanding of consciousness. And so he could lend himself to either one of those three positions. A great master can do that. So he's talking about the master of the qualified non-dual position. Ramanuja's theory is that the bound soul has its perfections involved, and when this perfection evolves, it becomes free. But the Advaitin declares that involution and evolution take place only in show. Both processes are in Maya, and so are apparent only. So that's something to chew on. It's a jawbreaker for your mind. And you can think about that. It's one of many great statements, of course, in the complete works of Vivekananda that give you a mind lift when you read those 10 volumes that are now available to us. So if you talk about a parinama, then everything that's non-transformational, I mean, you could probably start with the word, then go to the witness, then go to the underlying substratum, then go to the supreme being in form, the inner ruler immortal seated in your heart, and then go to the substratum of consciousness itself. These are all words that reflect the station of non-transformation. I would say that if you're on an ocean and you're looking at the billions of ripples, waves that are on the ocean, then you get hypnotized by that. But they're all in one ocean. So you stop seeing the ocean and you start seeing the ripples. And you just get pulled into the waves. That's what science has done. And religion, to a certain extent, when it's narrowed its field and forgotten Advaita, the non-dual position, which Vivekananda, Aseshanandaji, all these great souls shown in that picture with Ramakrishna, that's their main need. We are Advaitas. We are the new Advaitas on the block. Shankara and Gaudapada were the old Advaitas. We're carrying it through now. So this is their position, their unalterable, unimpeachable position, that all these worlds of name and form are ever changing, therefore they fall in the parinama category, therefore they fall in Maya, and that's why beings like Jesus renounced them, the worlds of name and form. So you can't even sneak out of it with the help of the savior of your own religion. If you go back and study him, according to Luke and Matthew and others, John, Christ had to have been this free wandering soul existing in a time when there was no such a word as Christianity. And in that free atmosphere, with all the press of war from his own religion, the Jews, and the Romans on the other side, was a perfect time for him to give the message. That play of Christ right there was Krishna and Arjuna centuries earlier. That same play was 550 years earlier, was Lord Buddha getting attacked by the intellectuals. And he threw flowers at them, the story of Lord Buddha. and him living in the woods as an ascetic and so forth. All those very stark examples of realized souls who renounced everything to bring about the understanding of what God and consciousness are, is Advaitic in nature. It's non-dual in nature. That's what they stand on. There's really not much to stand on there either. It's precipitous ascent into higher awareness. It's fingernail holds barely as you go up that steep cliff. You storm that castle of Advaita Vedanta, that gate, and try and make your way out of the dual and the qualified non-dual, like believing that maybe the soul has all the perfections in it, and then over time it will work its way out. That's called a post-mortem emancipation, according to Swami Aseshanandaji, and he was having none of it. I do not care for a post-mortem emancipation. I'll have my freedom right here and right now, because it is right here and right now in the eternal moment. It's not in time. If you get into time in any way, seven-day creation theory, or believing time to be real in evolution, particularly if you don't have an involution that goes with it, then you're in Maya. And it's going to be a long time before you see your way clear of that. Punch your way out of that particular wet paper bag. And a little water is not going to help. A little baptism, not going to help. What you need is fire. The fire of yoga is going to burn that paper bag. The water might make it a little wet, weak, so one or two could punch their way out. But you need this fire of yoga, which is called true transformation. If you want to talk about real transformation, well, let's get to it because I'm jumping the gun. He starts here. I'll get back to these quotes later. That's everything above the line is a parinama. Brahman, Paramatman, your true self, is non-transformational. This is non-dual. This is ultimate. This is absolute. This is consciousness with a capital C, awareness with a capital A. It has no evolution and involution in it. It's ever free and never bound. So everything below the line then is apparent transformation, parinama. Look how careful we are with the English words. If we called it transformation, we'd be saying transformation is real. But it's apparent transformation only. It only seems to change, like those ripples on a lake or an ocean that make you forget the unchanging substratum. And Swami Aseshanandaji once or twice said that. He said, if you identify with the surface of the ocean, you get tossed. But if you identify with the depths, there's only homogeneous awareness. So he was a man that was always identifying with the depths. He wasn't caught on the surface. I tried to take him on a circus wheel once, a merry-go-round, see, and he wasn't having it. In fact, that here probably came up with this as a result. Samsara means coming into the circus of this world, onto the merry-go-round of this life with a handful of cotton candy called the body. They couldn't talk him to go on that great Ferris wheel or whatever it was in Portland at the time. Why do you come here at all? Don't blame Adam and Eve, please. That myth is there, but it is your unfulfilled desires that brought you. Ironically, fulfilling desires is not the purpose of life. They cannot be fulfilled. Satiation never comes. Only when you realize your Atman will desires cease to plague you. Well, he's speaking from 50, 60, 70 years of experience as a monk at that point. Path of pleasure renounced, path of desire renounced, you see. Burnt in the fires of knowledge, which is the only fire that you want to burn anything in. You certainly don't want to burn them in the fires of hell. That's not going to do any good. Let's look below the line, though. Now here's Maya, name, form, time, space, and causation. Thanks, and we bow in deep veneration to Swami Vivekananda for giving us the true definition of Maya, because people were calling it illusion back in the late 1800s when they heard the word at all. But he said, no, it's not an illusion, it's a statement of fact inside the realm of parinama. It's name, form, time, space, and causality. And these are the things basically that are stumping science. Science is actually beginning to see through them, like Einstein saying time seems to be illusory, and James Jean saying nature seems to be a thought rather than a machine. There are actually some movements in that direction. And so there's some light being shed there. But to hold out in this, well, I'll get to that quote later, you hold on to this thin little hut of religious fundamentalism is not giving you any light at all. So as far as some of my teachers were concerned, science was a better friend of Vedanta than religion, theology is at this point. The good part of religion was in its worship of the personal God, because India can relate to that. Krishna, Shiva, so forth. The personal God's important to them. It's not like you check it out the window, but personal God's an illusion too. This is where you get this kind of thinking, sometimes undigested, coming into Western minds, is that you can just sort of do away with the personal God. No, it's not that. You get to the Father through the Son. But it's not ultimately the highest reality. God is formless. Formless essence. And every realized soul who went into Samadhi told you so when they came back. Buddha probably being one of the most profound of them all. Maya and Prakriti then, these are the realms of transformation. Manifest and unmanifested Prakriti. In order to understand nature, we're going to have to know that it has manifested form and it has its seeds. When I told you earlier that earth belongs to smell and taste belongs to, water belongs to taste and so forth, those are the connections you need to have to understand unmanifested Prakriti. And you're going to have to take them farther than that and look in your dream tonight and see that earth, air, fire, water, ether, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling, and seeing are all in your dream too, see. And those are called your subtle senses of your subtle body, but you're sort of like a child out here, can't see when it's born, a baby, has to develop its senses and get used to its body. The same way in your subtle body, you're going to have to get used to your subtle senses in order to use them right, to grow into them. And where it might take only a year or two for the baby to grow into that, it's going to take a lifetime or two for most souls to grow into their inner senses. And so you have to keep meditating. And that's where meditation has one of its best uses, is that you're plumbing the kingdoms of heaven within. And it's important, or I might say necessary, because you're going to have to work your way through form to get to the formless. Otherwise, you'll never have the non-dual experience, which seems to be so important to these souls, crucial to these souls. And that's why they came here, hoping that in free America, that they would find people here who could understand what they had gleaned for 2,500 years back to Buddha, and before Buddha, another 25 years back to Lord Vasishta. For 5,000 years they've developed this. Now, who in the world can we give it to who will understand it? Certainly not the Americans, he found out. Vivekananda called us straw on fire. He said the English were more suited for my message than the Americans. The English, if you get them on your side, they'll stay with you forever. They're like bulldogs. They'll grab on and not let go to something. Like Nivedita, Sister Nivedita, going to India with Swami Vivekananda and so forth. But the Americans flare up. They're all enthused. They'll support you, just like they did Dalai Lama when he got kicked out of Tibet and so forth. But then it'll all blow over, you see, and they'll lose their interest in it, and some new thing will come along, and they'll get all up in arms about that. And they're just in Maya. They're just caught on the merry-go-round of Maya with a cotton candy called the body. Prakriti, then, to understand, you need to know that it has seeds, that all of this came from seeds. Thought to object is the quickest connection. Like I said, the object, the microphone, is really a thought microphone first, and then it's a physical microphone. This is just thought made manifest, is what I'm saying. It's just thought concretized. It's not nature by itself. Nature can't form itself by itself. You see, It seems to. Fire, air, earth, water, and ether, flowers, trees. But it's insentient. The whole thing is insentient. There has to be a sentient principle behind it that's looking on and generating it. The personal God is generating it. The impersonal God's looking on. And guess what? You're that. I mean, it's cut to the chase. Non-dual reality is cut to the chase, and if you can keep up with it, come on, dance with me. If you want to dance with the Advaita Vedanta as your partner, then you're going to have to step quickly, and be astute and quick. Develop your swift intelligence. And you'll never be able to catch Mother Shakti, but you can try. There's a beautiful song in India that says, meditate upon the Divine Mother of the universe with all your heart and all your soul. You'll never be ever to understand her, but your mind will be pure in the attempt. Your mind will get pure in the attempt. And if you get the pure mind, then that's swift mind. And you borrowed it from her by meditating upon her. She'll clean it all out. She'll clear it. And you won't fall into ways of thinking that are unacceptable and untenable. You'll become like him. So you'll become a jivan mukta, a living, liberated soul, which is what you are anyway, but somewhere along the line you forgot. You dreamed yourself away from the truth. So then you wake up. Maya and Prakriti are a good way of talking about the roots of parinama, that which transforms and makes everything look like it's real, and that we sucker. That sucker punches us. It pulls the wool over our eyes and makes us think that we're nature, that we came from animals, that we got created in a beginning. Only one beginning, by the way. And then one end where, what the hell was it all for? End, you see. So you don't fall into that anymore when you understand these teachings. Now he says here at this level, through knowledge, though knowledge, being a compound, cannot be the absolute itself, it is the nearest approach to it and higher than will or desire. Some philosophies, even in India, would say that will is the highest thing. But Swamiji says, no, knowledge is the highest compound. It's the first admixture out the gate. When Brahman takes a form, for whatever reason, if we can say such a thing, it will take a form through knowledge. Knowledge will be the first thing. And those are streaming particles of awareness, you see. I put together this chart, which we'll see probably next week, that says from atomic particles to atmic particles. We put it together on Christmas about 5 years ago. And it shows you how quantum physics and classic physics are dealing with nanometers and so forth, measurements. But then pretty soon everything gets so small, like billions of particles vibrating at a billionth of a second, that you can't see anything anymore. Might as well call it empty at that point, I would say, and give it up. But they haven't done that. Those are called anamatras, physical particles. But what about pranamatras, your life force? What about chit matras, the particles of your thought? What about particles of intelligence that stream forth? And what does a particle of intelligence contain in your mind? What is a particle of intelligence? It's not like we're not ready to stand in front of the scientists and the theologians and tell them what's in the mind of a illumined soul, what's in the mind of a jivan mukta. There's so many things there we'll look at, see. But all back to this idea that knowledge is the first compound out the gate. I would rather call it wisdom, because knowledge can have upper and lower tiers, but this wisdom, so close to the non-dual, is the first thing, the first stream that comes out of the word. If you were to see the word, as Sri Ramakrishna said, when I first saw the word, I heard it humming, I went inside, I followed it like you would follow a sound over dunes, sand dunes. And then you go over the last sand dune and there was the ocean, you see. Said you have to hear Om like that and follow it inwards like that until you burst upon that oceanic scene of the word, which is in the beginning, which was with God and which was God. I mean, I don't see how Christ could have been any clearer than that, but whatever the case may be, he saw the Word and he saw worlds coming out of it, they're called Brahmandas, and then disappearing it back into it. And he said the beautiful thing about his vision was no time was passing as this happened. So we have to look into the insight, the realization of an avatar like that, of a supremely great soul, to understand what it is that we're encountering when we first even hear that sound of 1,000 bumblebees humming in our head. You see, those bumblebees are going in and out of Mother Kali's hair in ecstasy. They like to dive into her hair, and then they like to come out of her hair to get the bliss of turning and going back into her and merging with her. These are souls that love Divine Mother more than anything else. And they want to merge with her. And see, that was fun. I think I'll do it again. I think I'll separate and merge again, you see. And, well, I went a little tantric on us, didn't I? But anyway, Tantra and Vedanta to me are two streams that often mingle their waters. That's how I put it. So just enough to say that intelligence, knowledge, or call it sattva, balance, if you want a Sanskrit word, is the first compound of consciousness. That's how he put it. He was trying to speak in scientific terms because he met Nikola Tesla. He went to his house. Nikola Tesla boasted and said that he could show electricity and all these things. It was all back in the First World's Fair that Swamiji was there in 1893. Divine Mother had set it up perfectly. And so he met Madame de Calva and Nikola Tesla and all these, important people of the day in the West who were coming to dinner parties because the Swami Vivekananda had made such a great stir from all these talks, from these talk at the Parliament of Religions that he gave. Thunderous applause and all that kind of thing. It's all in the history, of course, of our country. But straw fire, where did it go? See, here's a few embers. You see, we're a few embers of the members of Swami Vivekananda's coming, his advent into the West, and we have to keep these alive by blowing on them. Ramakrishna used to say that. My eyes have become red by blowing on the waning coals of your spiritual life. Won't you do something? I gave you the truth. See, I gathered the wood. I found the fire. I set the wood on fire. I prepared the food. I cooked it. I put it on the table. Now won't you eat? He said, see, won't you eat a little? Get nourished? So what rails against that then is, is these beliefs that even now are attacking the citadel of a new, fresh, divine expression of God who has come to us. America has its first patron saint in Swami Vivekananda. He was first on the scene, and we're certainly not going to develop our own for a while. So we need to borrow from India. We need to borrow one. And he's the candidate as far as I'm concerned. We have to look back at him. And once in your life, read the complete works of Vivekananda. He never wrote a word, unless it was a song or a poem. But these stenographers took down his words of his lectures, and they'll give you a mind lift. Forget about your facelift. See, it costs you thousands of dollars, and it doesn't make you look that much better anyway. You need to have this mind lift. You see, and get beyond this belief in transformation, that everything's changing all the time and you're caught in it. Shifting sands, Christ talked about. You need the bedrock of the Spirit. I mean, if you're going to sing an old Bible story about the bedrock of the Spirit, then make sure it's about Advaita Vedanta. My teacher used to say, you're all worried about paradise lost. Let it be lost. What's so great about paradise? You see, you lose it, you gain it. It's change. It's parinama, So these teachings are extremely valuable to even have a word to assign to something like that. Oh, non-transformation is about the closest we can give you in English. to try and break through that haze that these other ideologies have, the smoke they're blowing into your mind. You see, and I'm not criticizing them here. They're all good in their own place. They all have something to offer, but they're all based. All these pearls are based on one thread, and if the thread isn't going through the pearls, then the pearls are lost and down the register. You can have a hard time finding them in the furnace, basement of your father's mansion. You're going to have to go looking. And that's what we're doing now in the West. We're looking for some of these pearls, and science is one of them. It's showing us something. Religion, if it's showing us anything, is what we don't want to end up like. Because religion is failing us. And unfortunately, Western philosophy also, as long as it's involved in Maya, that is making money, arguing, debating, and remaining only at a collegiate level in order to support your pleasurable lifestyle in the Bogamarg, then it's not, to me, it's not philosophy. Philosophy has to inspire you, has to waken you up, where you stand, and make you set your foot on the path towards something that's precious. That's the pearl of great price. There are pearls on that thread, but there's one pearl of great price. I know Dalai Lama once gave me this mala, you see, the beautiful main guru bead on it, you see. And the rest are all just wood. So there's this one pearl of great price, you see, that's there, that you're after. And every lifetime you're after that. If there's any reason to get on the merry-go-round, get your cotton candy body on a merry-go-round of the world, it's to grab that ring, isn't it? So that one round is one lifetime. And that one attempt at that ring is your understanding of Advaita Vedanta. Call it non-dualism. But you're going to have to practice non-dualism before you can understand non-dualism. See, if you're drooling over objects, that's called dualism. You have to practice non-dualism to understand non-dualism. And here's some of the things that you're drooling over. The mind and will, or the rajasic state, is nervous, right? It's running all the time. Even in a dream state, it's running. Hardly even gets any rest except in deep sleep, and it doesn't know what meditation is. And it's afraid of death, because death is also peace for it. It doesn't know that. I mean, where were you before you entered the mother's womb? Perfectly fine and happy. So death doesn't exist, right? Simply based on that alone. Why are you fearing death? You're either nothing in death, or you're something to be born in the realm of parinama. So why should either of those scare you? You're a birthless, deathless soul. I have received a command from the Divine Mother of the Universe that death must die. It's the beginning of a song in India. How about that for your lyrics? What shall I write here? Come on, baby, no. Shake it up, no. Let's see. How about, I've received a command from the Mother of the Universe that death must die. Yeah, that's good, I'll take that, you see. Put some chords to it. If you get down past intelligence and knowledge into the realm of parinama, you have mind and will. You have these things like intuition, sense of separate I-ness, secular intelligence, and self-arrogating thought. That's egotistic thought. You'll find a lot of that in science. Back up here in knowledge, you had things like pure intelligence that reflects off of reality. That's your atmic particle. That's your stream of awareness or stream of consciousness. You have direct perception of reality in the intelligence. You have sacred wisdom of the non-dual scriptures in your intelligence, and you have upalabdhi, insight into divine remembrance in intelligence. Your intelligence contains all the lifetimes you've lived, memory of all the lifetimes you've lived. They tell you that. Krishna says that in the Gita and so forth. He tells Arjuna that I know all my lifetimes all the way back to Ispaku, who transmitted me this wisdom at the very beginning of that cycle of time. But you don't know them yet, Arjuna, because you haven't sharpened your intellect yet. You haven't awakened the buddhi. People are shaking their buddhi all the time, see, but nobody stops shaking their buddhi. If they stop shaking it, then it's pure, peaceful, cutting edge kind of thing. It's deep insight. So divine remembrance in India, you were singing about it this morning in a song. It's Smriti Rupena Samstita. It's the Divine Mother contains memory of everything within her. And she is your intelligence, and she is your memory. O Mother, O Meditator, become the Mother. It's another song, first line to a song. O Meditator, become the Mother. I must become her to understand what she sees in her meditation. So I must saham, I must become one with the Mother, the Tantras say. So I meditate upon her. The yogis meditate upon her in dark mountain caves for months and years on end, just to get a glimpse of her. They meditate in dark mountain caves because in densest darkness her light will be that much brighter when she shows herself. See? So they're waiting for that light of Divine Mother to come upon them. So those kinds of things are in your intelligence, your sharpened intelligence, not your lower knowledge, not your ego-driven knowledge, which is self-arrogating thought and so forth. You'll never find her there. You've abandoned her, so she'll abandon you to your inferior ideologies, and she'll escape your detection, lifetime after lifetime. And she's swift, higher than the higher, lower than the lowest, faster than the fastest, slower than the slowest. Say the scriptures about Divine Mother. See how parinama, change, falls. He says here, if it is, this is true evolution, less and less in the body and more in the mind. Man, the highest form, meaning manas, mind, thought, and the animal that thinks and not the animal that senses only. So he's given us a concession here at the level of parinama. If there is any true evolution, it's going on in the mind, not the body. So if you want to involve after this involution is over, then you're going to have to know that the mind is the hub of all projection. That's why if you thought God was the creator, you're going to be disappointed when you find no God. And you'll turn into an atheist or an agnostic. But if you know that the mind is the projector of all this, then you're going to ask, who's got control of the mind here? And you know what yoga's about. Yoga's all about getting control of the mind. And since people can't do it, they default. What do they want you to get in control of instead? The prana. Yeah. But we don't know about prana. Not a word in our vocabulary in the West, in English. We call it life force, maybe élan vital by the French. But life force is what's causing your lungs to breathe, causing your eyes to see, causing your thoughts to rise and fall, as the case may be. Even when you arrest it, causing your mind to stop thinking. If you have control of prana, then you can stop thinking. And that's where your real intelligence will shine through. So mind is at the hub of all this. They've known that forever in India. And they know that this is all a projection of mind. It's not the business of nature. It's not God's doing. And it certainly has nothing to do with the devil. It has something to do with devilish things, though. Those devilish things which are in you that keep causing you to cause violence on others with the discoveries that Mother Nature holds for you, or to damn people to eternal hell, you see. Those kinds of idiotic things. That's what it's causing you to do when your mind falls into parinama and forgets its true non-dual nature. So we went through a few of those. But this is a beautiful quote. If there is any real evolution, it's in the mind. So you should look into your mind for the changes in your mind. That's why we put here sattva, rajas, and tamas. Because if you sit in meditation, you might think it's to have a vision of God. You might think it's to stop your thinking process. You might think it's to have visions of gods and goddesses or whatever, but really what you should be examining is your own mind's shifts, the shifts of consciousness, because that's parinama, that's changes. And when you see that there's a witness that's standing behind watching the shifts, the game is over for you. Then you're not going to be satisfied with the wheel of birth and death. That's what Lord Buddha said. O architect of Maya, I have seen you. Now I'm not going to build any more houses on earth. I'm not going to build houses of stone. I'm not going to build houses of wood. I'm not going to build houses of flesh and bone. And I'm certainly not going to build houses of wise conception. See? It's all change. It's all Mara. It's all Maya. It's all samsara. I've seen that. I'm clean. I want to get out of the bath now. See? This is all a bath. Vivekananda called this the gymnasium of souls. Flex your muscles and get out. And he came back and took a body. You think this is all about some spiritual suicide we have plotted for the whole world and beings or something? Cutting our own throats? No, this is about eternal life. Those who love their life will lose it. Those who hate their life will get it again in eternity, is how Jesus put it in the Christian fold, if you want to say it. So, eternal life is something akin to what we're talking about here, a parinama. Now, the last tier here, and as we come close to the end of our class, I believe, is brain, senses, and desire. This is the tamasic area. Here's where you have sense knowledge, sense perception only. You have Vedana, feelings, sensations, and contact with objects. That's one of the teachings of Lord Buddha's Eightfold Path, the 12 links to rebirth in 3 lifetimes. There's a beautiful teaching on that, which I have a chart on. Vedana is one of the links that you have to break. And I was mentioning even a little bit today that the Westerners are very naive with their emotionalism, their drama. You see, dharma, not drama, is what we want. And their mystery mongering, their desire for occult powers, domination over other countries as an occult power. All of these things are highly suspect and highly karma producing, suffering producing things. And you can't escape the kickback from them. You may be able to for a while, but as we know already, the environment's kicking back on us from what we're doing to it. Even the insentient Mother Nature will rebel against you. What to speak of your own conscience, see? And the conscience of the ancestors and the angels and the gods and goddesses that are keeping you in the 3 worlds. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. They're keeping you in the 3 worlds so that you can praise them, so that they can receive adulation from you. But you want out. You want free. See? So there's so many things to consider, good, bad, and mixed. Probably best teacher of that is Sri Krishna in the Gita. Read those chapters on karma and what he suggests and what he teaches. So there's also vasana here, desires based in past experiences. So like the camel eating thorny bushes and being born again to other camels. That's why there's so many horses out there and chickens running around and animals and people, is because of their desires are bringing them back to do more of the same. Running in the same rut all the time. To hope for help from family and friends provides no real solution. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. That is, doctors breed doctors, lawyers breed lawyers, so forth. Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. And there's not one, isn't there one inspired, original thinker among us? Do we have to borrow him from other countries to remind us of what's right, what's basically right and wrong even? That that we could become so insane and so crazy as to think that killing others is acceptable under any circumstance. I mean, you've got people like the Jains. They don't care whether Hitler or anyone else is on the planet. They just want to get out of the world, because Hitlers are going to come on end as long as people believe in these ideologies. Maya's going to go on. Samsara is going to keep circling, just like these flowers are circling all the way down into this fire. That's going to keep going on. So they got clean by not harming anyone, animals, insects. They got their karma expunged. Now they have nothing holding them down to the body anymore, and heaven can't get them either. A post-mortem emancipation is not in their future. They're free now. So you have people who have very extreme vows, and you have people who have very extreme insanity. See? And somewhere in there you have to fit. You have to find this balance, this yogic balance, this sattva. See? So if you come up and out of this kind of change, if you really want to find the changeless, then Swami Vivekananda proposes to you that this involution is the way to do it. It's a philosophical involution that your mind takes, just like it took on the body in the first place. The mind produced the body and it got into it as consciousness. The mind is the culprit. So you can't praise or blame God for anything. You can only do the same to yourself. See? Praise yourself for a good life, blame yourself for a bad life. God has nothing to do with your life. Because God's not in form. The closest thing you saw to God in form was Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. And they didn't come back very often. They weren't here to have fun, to socialize. They were here to show you how to get free. They're the exemplars. Well, to finish up here, let's take the last quote, and it's fitting enough by a great Advaitin, Gaudapada. So long as the upadis, these are your sheaths, body, energy, mind, are coverings over Atman. So he's using a Sanskrit phrase. So long as the upadis are present, the jivas retain their individuation, but the Paramatman undergoes no change due to these superimpositions. As the clay pot is not a transformation of the changing akasha, that's space, so too the jiva, the individual soul, is not a transformation of the immutable Paramatman, who had these changes projected upon it by ignorant minds. So ignorant minds, including your own, are going to project these changes. I am the body, I am the senses, I am the brain, I am the mind, it's my will, I am the intellect, it's my knowledge. When ego finally gives way, all of a sudden you realize you're in Maya. And nature has seeds that you need to burn so that you won't come back into the form anymore. Oh, architect of Maya, I have seen you. I'm not going to build bodies anymore. And I had you all chant today, right? No more birth in the womb of matter for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. So when you see a soul like Swami Vivekananda, in this case Swami Aseshanandaji, come back into the body, that's an emanation you're seeing. They're not the body. They're non-dual awareness associating with the body. And that was one of the contributions of Gaudapada in his line. Never identify with the body, but you can associate with it. Make sure the association is for the highest good of all living beings. So I'll end with this, back to Swami Aseshanandaji, end with this quote at the bottom, I think it's the bottom of this one. Theologians have fashioned this universe into a close-knit, tidy little box. Theologians, right? Science has rendered it into an ever-expanding universe. Science. Scientists think that matter is indestructible. No, matter is not indestructible, nor is it destructible. It is unoriginated. And I think I was hardly ever more struck by a quote from Swami Aseshanandaji than that one. I mean, science and theology, I didn't really have any trouble with that. But when he said that matter is neither destructible nor indestructible, and in that way pointed me to non-origination, to aparinama, that there's no origin to anything, and that all cycles of time are illusory, or projections that go nowhere and have no substance, then all of a sudden I got the Advaita key to turn in the lock. It's beautiful what he says there, beautiful. Matter is neither destructible nor indestructible, and people are thinking, science and theology are thinking in these different ways, you see, but nobody thinks that it's unoriginated. It has no beginning and it has no end. Non-origination. Ajativada is the other pillar. And we'll look at that more next week. So let's end here with a chant. Om Masato, Om Masato Ma Sadgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya, Abira Bira Mayeti, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.